This is Colin McGuigan for IFLTV. Delighted to be joined by Frank Smith. Francisco, do you remember the last time we done an interview?
Not a Scooby. Do you?
You've been avoiding me for so long.
You haven't asked me.
No, I've asked a couple of times, and the last time I asked you for an interview, you were like,
Charlotte?
yeah. Well, no, it wasn't text message, it was in person. It was you, Bank Ben, too, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, Frank, can we do an interview? Oh, yeah, I'm so busy right now. And I said, yeah, he is busy. I swear, 90 seconds later, I turned the corner and you're doing an interview with another outlet. I'm not going to say who. I don't want to say it. I'll tell you off camera after. But you were up against the wall doing an interview with an outlet, and I just went, oh my God.
Was it after the fight?
No. This was on Friday.
Oh, sorry. Very sorry.
Mugged me off, mate. So we haven't spoken since then. How have you been?
Good, mate. You?
Yeah, not so bad. You've been on a bit of a world tour recently?
Yes. I was in New York for Dalton Smith's amazing week. I mean, you didn't ask me for an interview there.
Well, the reason why I didn't ask you is because you didn't seem in the mood to do an interview. You were just wanting to get out of the arena. It had been a long night. You didn't seem as if you wanted it.
That's
You actually didn't, though. You were like, I think you were going to pay for a bar tab for Dalton Smith at the time, and I didn't want to interrupt you. That's the way I seen that moment.
Yeah, probably that sounds about right. I was going to pay the bar tab. But you didn't ask me, is what I'm saying.
It's true.
No, I went from New York. I actually had a bit of a holiday. I went to Miami, and it was pissing down with rain for 3 days. So then I flew to LA. So I've been in LA for 6 days, and now I'm here.
We're here for a big night at the Fontainebleau. Andy Cruz's bid to become a world champion. I was actually looking earlier on. I was thinking, I wonder if this is obviously Lomachenko done it in three fights, I think. But Andy Cruz, world champion within 7 fights. How much does that mean to you guys at Matchroom that have taken him from amateur superstar to potential world champion?
That was always the plan, to move quickly. When you're working with someone like Andy Cruz with the ability he had, when we signed him, everyone was saying he's the best fighter to come through from the amateur ranks. And we believed that he'd bring that through into the professional ranks. He's got a real test on Saturday night against Opetaia, but we believe he can go and do it. Just 7 fights in, but that was always the aim. Come straight into 10-round fights. And I think it was about a year ago, I was actually sitting in the restaurant downstairs here in the Fontainebleau and speaking to his team about what we do, and we said, let's go the IBF route. It's the best one. It's going to guarantee you the shot in the position he was in, and we're here now. And it's great. It's great to see. He's worked very hard. He's a tremendous fighter, and he's going to get his opportunity on Saturday and then go on to big things from there.
Do you think, you obviously run a lot of the operational side of things for Matchroom, so you're probably best placed to answer this. Do you think we're going to see more of these type of shows for Matchroom? Obviously, there's Zuffa Boxing now who are going to do similar enough size shows outside of this. Are we going to see more of this, especially in America?
Yeah, I think our aim is to do more and more shows, as always. I think we did something like, we operated 40 events last year around the world.
And what would you want to do in 2026?
42. Look, one day it would be great to get to 52. One a week all over the world, with shows in all different markets.
Is that a realistic goal, though, as a company? Do you say that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, when we started on 14 shows a year back in the UK in the early, or 10 shows or whatever it was, everyone would have said it was unrealistic to get to 20, 25, 30. But to see where we've got to now, there's no reason we can't go to that, that place of doing a show a week, but different levels. I also want to look at some kind of like feeder system, smaller shows, much smaller shows, like even smaller than next gen shows, where we keep people active and we look at, especially in the US, like West Coast fighters, East Coast fighters, and you build them through.
Do you use them, maybe local promoters for that?
I think it would be with the right partners, but under some kind of brand of ours. I think that's something I'm interested in looking at. I think we come under a lot of pressure. Like we do smaller shows, right? You can't count this as, it's still a, IBF world title fight. You can't count this as a smaller show whatsoever. But when we do smaller shows, we come under pressure of, what's this show Matchroom are doing? 1,000 people, 1,500 people. And, it's all part of the building process with the fighter. And I want to look at a system of how we make those work while keeping our fighters active, while looking for new talent, and then build into the bigger shows. So I don't see a reason why you couldn't get to a show a week without question.
It actually leads me on to another point. IVB boxing, I'm sure you've seen this whole thing. I watched a bit of Ed Pereira with Ariel Helwani yesterday. How do you see that? Because you're someone who actually I know Eddie's kind of the front man for the company, but you're the one that organises everything. You kind of deep dive into all this stuff. From an operational point of view, what he's trying to do you think it works?
I think it's amazing, like the ideas, like you can't shoot down the ideas. He's got to have 140,000 people at an event. I know Ed, I've spent time with him, I've worked with him in the past. You know, boxing's a crazy business where people fall into boxing, and people with money and investment and success in other areas get into boxing and go, oh, give this a go now. You know, and a lot of people do that. And it won't be the first time someone comes into boxing with grand ideas and huge ideas, and I wish him all the success, of course. I wish everyone who comes into boxing the success, because the better it is for the sport we're involved in, you know. And yeah, I like the idea of doing huge events like that. 140,000 people in San Francisco sounds amazing.
I think more the question is, you know, I think Ariel said it yesterday, have you got a deal with YouTube? And he kind of said, basically, I'm not going to be a promoter, I'm going to work with others. So I think my question that kind of is, are you open to working with him on that?
I mean, look, we obviously, promoters, not just us, have exclusive broadcast. Like, we have an exclusive broadcast deal with DAZN. So you're not going to see us going and putting on events that are on another platform, you know. So it's easier said than done, in essence. You know, I don't know. That Ariel Helwani show interview was probably the most telling interview of all in terms of actually getting some information. Because I don't know. I know as much as you do. I've spoken to him in the past. I knew he had plans to go and do these things, but beyond that, I don't know what the detail of it is. You know, we're on the same level as to what detail it is. But yeah, he'll need someone who hasn't got deals in place if he's going to do something like that.
In terms of the actual landscape of something so big as YouTube, right? Have you ever even thought about that in terms of, because it's kind of been untouched. I know he spoke yesterday about the NFL on YouTube, for example. We've never really seen that in boxing. Obviously, there's YouTube channels like IFL, there's all these different YouTube. You've even got your own YouTube channel. Ever thought about actually doing an event solely on YouTube at any point, or because of DAZN you've never actually went down that route?
We stream events on YouTube, don't we? We do have
a year before the bell.
We've done streamed shows before. You know, like this thing about how big is a platform, right? And I've seen loads of compare it, like this platform, that platform, like, because it's never ending, isn't it? You know, the reality is now, like, why I love DAZN, because you've got a captive audience of all boxing fans, right? Everyone who watches DAZN, who's got DAZN, is a boxing fan, right? And you can that's a great market. There's other ways than just viewing figures now to build talent, build stars. And look at, so it's driven by social media numbers. A clip can generate so much more than, you know, and that is the world we live in now. The world we live in isn't necessarily just I follow it on this network platform, or whatever you want to call it. It's I saw that 7-second knockout clip on my Instagram or on my TikTok or whatever, you know, like that is how you build a star these days, you know, like, and I see this about, it was like when there was the argument about Sky Sports at the time, you know, Sky Sports have got, I don't know, 9 million subscribers. Doesn't mean that's 9 million people interested in boxing, does it? You know, like you may have the same captive audience on DAZN of a sport that you've got on Sky. Don't get me wrong, it's broader, but it doesn't mean that you can't hit that market or that, you know, that group in some other way. So I think everyone can use things to, you know, sing a song that suits what they're trying to say. Yeah, is YouTube huge? Yes, we know it is. We do massive numbers on YouTube on our build-up content, on our highlight stuff, you know, our archive shows. So it has a place. Can it be interesting for boxing? I'm sure it can. But from what I understood from that interview yesterday, it's a pay-per-view model. You know, it's on YouTube. But anyone, you could, like, I could do that tomorrow, set up a pay-per-view model. But I wish him, like I say, I know Ed well. I wish him all the best. I wish everyone who invests money in boxing the best.
Bringing me on to Zuffa boxing. First question. Dana was on Bloomberg and he was asked the question of, you know, how do you compare to your rivals? And he said, there is no comparison. I'm going to blow them out of the water, is what he said. When you hear that kind of fighting talk from Dana White, who's obviously been so successful with the UFC, does it add an extra element of motivation to you and Eddie and everyone else at Matchroom to say, right, we actually need to buckle up our ideas this year? Because, I mean, you are generally the only worldwide promoter in boxing. I think I'm factually saying that. There's no one else doing it. But when you've got someone like Dana White who actually might rival that in terms of a worldwide promoter, does that motivate you more?
look, they're elite at what they do. You're not just talking about the UFC. You're talking about the UFC, WWE. You know, like these people. This isn't just like some people who have come along and set something up and gone, oh, we did all right with that. Like, they're serious business. You know, all of them. Dana White, Nick Khan, Ari Emanuel, like Mark Shapiro, so many people involved in that business to make it the success it is. You know, they've got the PBR, the professional bull riding, or I think it's called something like that. They've got Power Slap. Like, it's not just, you can't just pigeonhole it to one thing. So, of course, they're massive at what they do, but I think boxing is a different animal. You know, I think it's completely different to what they've done with UFC. And again, you'd have to be a hater to not sit there and go, wow, look at the business they built with UFC. But boxing isn't the same. Boxing is a sport with hundreds of years of heritage, that before us there was big promoters before, you know, and there'll be big promoters in time. I don't think it's ever going to be run by one individual, one group, quite honestly, in the way they've done. I think what they did with UFC, and you can't question their business acumen, because they've created I think a $40 billion market cap group across all of their assets, not just UFC, but across all of their assets. So as a business, wow. But they did it at a time where MMA wasn't what it was. MMA back then was very much broken up. People didn't have the interest they do now. I think there's a lot boxing can improve upon. You know, as much as I've worked in boxing long, I do agree there's a lot boxing can improve upon. But yeah, it's good to have competition. You know, we've always had competition now in individual markets. And boxing for years, like, you look back and you say there was Triller, there was BLK Prime. You know, PBC invested $600 million. It's never ended. It's been like that for years. But you have serious operators coming in to do it now.
The Jai Opetaia situation. Obviously, you guys worked with Jai. Also, I think Gold Star were involved in somewhat. Tasman Fighters, right? Where did that breakdown come, and did you expect this from Jai Opetaia? Was it something that you knew about long before it was announced, or was it a shock?
Look, Jai has been, you know, we obviously promoted him for a number of fights. His last fight was on Stan. Of course, we've got an exclusive broadcast agreement with DAZN, so we weren't really involved in that last fight. We've been involved in the fights prior to that. It is what it is. Fighters come, you know, I've been asked this question, like, there's so many fighters that you can look at and go, we should have done something with it, or we should have extended with them, or we should, like...
You put a lot into him, though, in terms of, you just went to Australia, you've done shows there, you were working with Mick Francis.
Yeah, but we never operated our own show there with him. You know, Mick was running a lot of it. And look, it's happened so many times. I'm sure it will happen again. And this is to all promoters, isn't it? Like, fighters come, fighters go. I think, you know, and we were talking about it last night, when you look at like Anthony Joshua, we've promoted him since his professional debut, right? We've worked with him for 12 years. It's been the best relationship you could ever have had. And I think fighters, it's very easy to jump around and go, well, there's a little bit more here, there's a little bit more there. But actually, in the sport of boxing, what you need is someone who's completely committed to you and will do anything for you. And it's a commercial business at the same time, right? So people naturally, their mind is always going to jump to, can I get an extra $1 here, right? But you have to think about it in the long term. And not everyone does that. But it's not the first time it's happened. It won't be the last time it happens. And yeah, is it frustrating when you invest money? Because at the end of the day, our business is to invest in fighters, right? We invest in fighters and then they go elsewhere. You know, is it ideal? No, not really, but it is what it is.
I think the point, though, is, right, he's not just any old other fighter. He's a potential pound-for-pound superstar, potential down the line heavyweight champion.
But sorry to butt in. Like, it's like saying, do I wish we would have kept Fabio Wardley, who's now the WBO world champion? Like, sure. And who would have said he'd do that? But then maybe if we had kept Fabio Wardley, would we have like? Do you know what I mean? Like, at the time, you can't.
You're absolutely right? But see, from a business perspective, you probably lost money on Jai a lot, right? At different fights, because, like, I mean, I don't know ticket wise and things and different shows he's been on, right? But you were investing in him as an athlete for Matchroom, right? So you're probably potentially losing a lot of money on different fights to get him to the stage where actually, you know what, we're going to make a little bit of money. So that's kind of my point. Does it hurt at this point that he leaves just before he kind of gets to that point?
Again, I'd be stupid of me to say, of course, I'm not sitting there going, wow, it's great, but it is what it is. And if you spend too much time licking your wounds on that, you're going to miss everything else that's going on. And there's so many opportunities. And this is my thing, is like, you could look at every fight. Look, go back over the last 10 years. Go, oh, should we have lost him then, or should we have lost that fighter there, or could we have invested in this person? Yeah, but if we invested in that person, we wouldn't have been able to have done it. Like, it's not an endless pot of money, because otherwise we wouldn't be running a business, and we're in this to run a business. So,
was it amicable? Is the door open for them to ever come back?
Again, look at this sport, or what things have been said over the years, much worse than what's been said publicly. Or like what's happened here. Do people get back together and work together? Yes. So it'd be stupid to say no, we could never work together again. But he's made his decision. Of course, it changes relationships, doesn't it?
Does it change the relationship with Tasman fighters, Mick Francis? Is that then now, like for example, you guys still have Terramona, I believe?
Yeah, we've got Terramona, but Terramona signed exclusively to Matchroom. We've got so many fighters, but boxing is a crazy sport, right? Unfortunately, where you have to always, you're not always going to align on things. And someone makes a decision, but you still have to get on with what you're doing. Because otherwise it's just like, you wouldn't be in this business. If you sat here and got angry about every single thing, again, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, it's irrelevant, who cares, at all. But I'm sitting here saying, well, we've got to now focus on the 94 other fighters we've got. Yes, was Jai Opetaia a brilliant fighter? Yeah, is there other fighters with more, maybe not as good as him, but with bigger commercial opportunities? Yes. So it's like you can weigh everything up whichever way you want.
Do you think, completely taking yourself out of the Matchroom hat here, do you think it's a good boxing decision for Jai Opetaia?
Time will tell. Like, again, we don't know enough about, I think you look at the show this weekend, they're not in it for do a couple of shows, see how we get on. They're in it for the long run. They're going to be here for 5, 10, and if they want to implement change in the sport, that's not going to take a week, is it? This is, again, I go back to the point, this is a sport with hundreds of years of heritage. And if they want to come in and do what they want to do, it's going to take 10 years. So, it's going to be interesting. I'm sure he's done a great deal. I'm sure he's getting paid very well.
What about Boots Ennis Virgil Ortiz situation? Is it any nearer to completion? Are you guys maybe going to walk away and say, we've got other plans for Boots now? Where are you at with that?
Look, we got to make a plan for Boots, as you say. We've been waiting on this fight for a long time. Let's see, anything can happen. But at the same time, Boots wants to fight. Boots wants the biggest fights. So let's see. There's a lot going on, obviously, that's very public, between Virgil and Golden Boy. I'm hopeful that one way or the other we try and find a deal for that fight, because it's a fight that people have been speaking about for a long time. It's a fight we want to make. It's a fight that Boots wants. But I can't really say it's any closer right now, But anything can happen in this crazy sport.
Where are we at with Conor Benn's next move? Rolly Romero a possibility?
I've heard about that. I don't know if that's... Look, he's obviously the WBC mandatory, So he's going to be the mandatory to the winner of Ryan Garcia and Mario Barrios, which is Feb 21st, not long now. It's 4.5 weeks away or whatever. 5
So
weeks.
would you say maybe Conor might not fight till June then and just wait it out?
I think anything... He's actually coming to New York. We're sitting down with him and his team in New York next week to work out the plan. But he has always been very vocal for many years, even before this order, that he wanted to win the WBC world title. He's got that opportunity now. So if it means, waiting out, that may be something he does. But there's a lot of fights out there to be made. Rolly Romero's mandatory is Shakram Giasov, a fighter Matchroom obviously promote. That's a fight that, should have taken place a while back now, But it's interesting times.
Dalton Smith Puello, is it going to be that, or is he going to get the option of a voluntary?
We're working through it now. I think a voluntary would be great. Obviously, Puello was the mandatory, but we're working through that detail now, having those conversations. Let's see.
What's the story with Callum Smith, David Morrell?
That's going to go to purse bids. I think Gustavo put that out the other day.
Would you like to bring that fight to Liverpool?
For sure. It's something we're looking at the minute. Yeah, for sure. We're in those discussions. There's a lot of great fights to be made, though. Working through it. You got Crocker against Liam Parra as well.
Is that close to being made, and is it going to be in Belfast? A lot of people are asking, is it going to be in a stadium? Can you give us any update?
The aim is Belfast for that one. I don't think in a stadium. I think more realistic in the arena with a stadium fight later this year for Lewis.
The stadium fight later this year, could that be a Conor Walker rematch possibly?
Who?
Conor Walker?
Possibly. There's a fight I'd like to do for Conor Walker, and the winner of that fight
What's
Lewis.
that?
Don't know.
You're so coy. If I said that to Eddie, he would just spit it out, but you can't tell us.
I could tell you. I'm not going to. Because but what I don't like is saying things and they don't happen, and then everyone goes, "Oh, you said it." You know, so it's easier just to wait and see.
Before I let you go, Johnny Fisher, any update on?
Yeah, well, look, we've been discussing trying to make the TKV fight for the British title. That's a fight we're very interested in. It's a fight Johnny wants and the team want. Let's see. Let's see if we can get it done.
Last one before I let you go. Missed, I know, but I forgot about this. Ben Shalom was very critical of Matchroom's kind of involvement with Dalton Smith almost, and I'm sure you've seen that interview. What did you make of that? Because we haven't obviously spoke since then. What did you make of them comments from Ben Shalom on kind of you letting him down is basically what he was referring to?
Just going to start this by saying you asked me a question about Ben Shalom.
Yeah, for clarity, yeah.
Because every interview I do, that I get asked a question and I say something, and like, all you talk about is Ben Shalom. It's like, so in the thing you can say, all you talk about is Ben Shalom because I got asked a question about Ben Shalom. So I don't go out my way to speak about Ben Shalom. He's just a grade A whopper, isn't he? Like, we've worked with Dalton Smith from his professional debut, taken him through, and he's done amazing work, as has Grant, as has Sean, his manager, Pierce, everyone involved in the team. But taking him on that route, invested heavily to bring the right fights, to get in the right opportunities at the right times, worked to get into a position for a purse bid, lost the purse bid. Was that ideal? No. You know, we sitting there going, oh, great, you know, like, but that's the world we're in. We don't pull our fighters out of purse bids when they get opportunities, unlike some other people in this industry. So Fresh put in a massive bid. You know, that's the fun and games of purse bids, isn't it? You never know. We were all there. We backed him. We were in his corner. We were there the whole of fight week. I've never seen so many Matchroom staff at another event. That's because we've been on this journey with Dalton from the start. So critical. I mean, what he's done with Adam Azim's career is criminal. Like, Adam Azim was on a good little path, wasn't he? But
his answer to that would have been, "You'll all thank me now for making this Azim and Dalton Smith fight bigger."
But he also said this is the biggest fight. But when you look at where Dalton Smith is now, no, the fights against the likes of Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez winner are huge. Like, that's the level he's at now. And when I said about Adam Azim, like that fight, Adam shouldn't be, and this is no disrespect to him, he shouldn't be like discussed on Dalton's level right now because he hasn't done what Dalton's done. You know? If he goes and wins a world title, all credit to him. If he goes and gets big wins and puts himself, all credit to him. But he shouldn't be mentioned on or uttered on the same level as him because he hasn't done it. So for him to say it's the biggest fight out there, could it be a huge fight? Of course it could. But we're in the Dalton Smith business. We don't care about Adam Azim. Like, Dalton Smith can go and get these mega fights, these global mega fights, you know, and that's the focus. And that's not putting down Adam Azim. That's not saying the fight won't happen, but every time the fight got ordered, you know, Shalom pulled him out quicker than... I was going to say something, I'm not going to say it now. And, you know, so like to sit there and say critical... And whether you think I like him, dislike him, it's just utter bollocks, isn't it? But let's be honest. Even if you were a neutral, you could say...
You actually do like him deep down.
Who?
Ben Shalom.
You just asked me a question about whether I deep down like that gentleman. I mean, yeah, he's a massive fan of his.
Frank, appreciate your time as always on IFLTV. Look forward to catching up again this week and big fight on Saturday night for Matchroom.
Thanks for having me. Don't miss